can't do it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Open Wide vs. Soccer. My name is Hud Vertelny. Alongside me this evening, Paul Maurer, Thomas Floyd. As usual, special guest star, Charlie Bohm. Charlie, thanks for joining us this evening.
I'm so honored to be here, guys. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Charlie actually complained on Twitter recently that we weren't featuring him enough on the show.
Fake news.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Seth, you've got it slightly twisted. I simply was asked why I'm not on Open Wide vs. Soccer more often. And I told the truth.
Charlie, what are you drinking right now exactly?
I'm drinking some bourbon from a bottle, the same bottle that you're drinking your drink from.
It's plastic screw top bourbon with did you drizzle maple syrup in it?
Yeah, a little maple syrup and water on the rocks.
That's improvising right there.
You know, if you asked, you could try it, but
I'm good with my
seem like you're just mocking.
Screw top whiskey with Wawa half and half. So
you only brought enough mixer for yourself.
I've never been known for my generosity or my kindness.
Well, I adapted well. My drink's probably better than yours because I Iron Chef the drink, but it's good anyway.
Guys, as always, we're taking your calls 708-LT-OWFSS. Speaking of LT, let's just get this out of the way. Huge news: Longtan at age 30 finally got his first cap for China. Do any of us actually know anything about it or not? Like who he played against?
Yeah. I'll tell you all about it.
Please share.
He started. So China was recently in a 4-team friendly tournament. They lost their first game 6-0 to Wales. I think Gareth Bale had like 3 or 4 goals. Second game they played Czech Republic, and they decided that they needed to shake things up a little bit after that 6-0 loss. That's like someone was calling us. That was just part of the song.
Yeah.
So they decided to shake things up and started Longtan, first cap for China. They did lose, but this time they only lost 4-1. So I think it's fair to say that Longtan made China 3 goals better.
I imagine just that because China is such a large country, they've just now found Longtan. Like earlier, I made the comparison to like the intro of Ace Ventura 2. Where somebody's like hiking through a remote wilderness and gets to a cabin he's been hiding in. I imagine that's what happened with Longtan. Like he opened the door and was like, "Finally, I've been waiting for you." You know.
Yeah, and as Thomas pointed out, China not in the upcoming World Cup, but there's still time for Longtan to make his mark at the World Cup. Provided they qualify in 2022, he'll only be 34 and 2026 he'll be 38, so he's still got 2 World Cups in him. I think
that World Cup in 26 is the first expanded 48-team World Cup. You know, China probably has a real shot at making it, and I'm not going to count out a 38-year-old Longtan. I'm pretty sure like 39-year-old Rafa Marquez is about to go to the World Cup with Mexico.
Incredible.
The only reason they expanded the World Cup is to have China qualify.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say to have Longtan.
Well, by extension,
right.
The only reason they expanded was to have Longtan. I was getting there. Some other housekeeping stuff here. Thomas Floyd is no longer a soccer journalist. Thomas recently was promoted from Goal.com to entertainment editor of the Washington Post-Express. Congratulations, Thomas. And how do you feel about that?
I'm pretty excited. Yeah. I covered entertainment back in the day in college. I wrote, some movie reviews and theater reviews and did some interviews with, people in the movie business. And that was always a passion of mine. So I still love soccer. I'll still follow soccer, and I think you'll still see some soccer writing from me, ironing out the details on how that'll work. But I wouldn't expect me to just suddenly stop paying attention. I need to, it would be pretty sad if I spent all this time going to games in the raccoon-infested RFK Stadium press box and then dipped out right before Audi Field opened.
It'd be incredible if the team denies your credential now. That's all of our hopes,
You really think the press box is going to be better in Audi Field?
Yeah, I'm predicting like a obstructed view
Well,
situation.
we know where it is now. If you saw Steve Goff's photo essay, he did a tour of the stadium site with photos, and for the first time, we have an identification of where the press box will be.
How did it look?
I mean, it's in a corner. It's to the not really in the corner. It's on the side, but alongside an 18-yard box. So you're pretty far down the one side.
Like Columbus Crew style, sort of.
I've actually never covered a game in their traditional press box. They have the auxiliary ones for national team games. But Houston, I covered the game there, and their press box was in a similar spot. And, it was a good place to see a game, more so if the team attacking that end is dominating possession. But, it could be worse. It's also about halfway up. It's not like it's at the top of the stadium or anything, so it seems like an all right view.
Just to keep this housekeeping going, Thomas has a new job opportunity. I, last week, lost my shit and quit my job with no notice. Yeah, what I'll say is it's great right now because I'm in that sweet spot, like the first 3 weeks of unemployment when you're not really worried about money yet, and you're mostly just enjoying doing things during the daytime because that's not something but
guys, Pablo came with me to do my carpool run yesterday afternoon.
Yeah.
So
I walked into a school, which I'm legally allowed to do apparently now.
Yeah.
That was a long legal process.
It was, but I'm happy, and my voting rights too. I'm happy I got those back.
Yeah.
No, listen, Pablo's on the list for my kid. This is a serious thing. My wife made a long list of people that are
keyword
anyone
long.
that could possibly be, and we could need to pick up our child from her school. My child is 4 years old, and they have security like all schools, and you get buzzed in and everything. So Pablo's been through it now. I can guilt trip him into picking up my kid now because he knows the routine. He's on the list.
I have a feeling I'm like number 12 on that list. It's sort of like if like the first 10 people on the presidential order of succession died, and like the Secretary of the Interior all
Accidents
of a sudden was
happen.
president. Exactly. Yeah, you're just covering all your bases.
Yeah.
There's a lot to talk about with DC United, right? For once.
Yeah, not a lot of on-field stuff as they didn't play last weekend, but
thankfully.
Yeah, they were undefeated last weekend. Some off-field news for sure. I guess we got to start with the potential new ownership. We have Patrick Soon-Shiong. I hope I'm not totally butchering this name, but a businessman from Los Angeles. I think he used to be a physician, a surgeon. Sorry, Patrick, I kind of sold you short there. But he has invested in sports before. He has a small piece of the Lakers, I believe. And apparently he may be coming in to take over Eric Tohir's equity in the team and possibly a little bit more. What does this all mean for DC United?
I'll say, first off, it seems fairly predictable. Is anyone here surprised by this news, or were we all under the assumption that Eric Tohir's game here was always to, kind of make an investment, build a stadium, flip the team?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say game because I think he attended one game during his time as owner.
I feel like he attended a couple, but they were all in that first season, and then after that, his interest went elsewhere.
Well,
he lost interest in Milan too very quickly.
Yeah, elsewhere was Inter. He bought a large stake in Inter like the year after he bought DC United. So as soon as that happened, I think we all sort of suspected that he wouldn't be focusing as much attention on DC United.
I'll say that I don't think anybody's surprised about the fact that it's happening. I am a little surprised at the timeline, only because the stadium lease sort of stipulates that United, if they sell a majority interest in the team to somebody else before April of next year, has to pay, I think it's 15% of the profit on the sale. Now, obviously, they said the valuation is something insane, $500 million.
Yeah.
which for some perspective, I think Newcastle is valued at $345 million. This is a Premier League team, right? So, they're including the stadium, which they value at $400 million somehow, and their practice facility in Loudoun County, which they value at $40 million somehow in this figure. Now, I don't know, how much profit there's going to be, whether, for example, the owners might say something like, well, we've been operating at a loss for 2 or 3 years, so we're going to subtract that. But I'm most curious to see how, I don't know this is my opinion, and I don't know any other way to put this, to see how the team kind of weasels out of paying the city what they're owed,
I'm curious, what was that stipulation again?
If the team is sold, if a majority interest in the team, so like over 50%, which is 78%, is sold before April 1 of 2019, the city is owed 15% of the profit after losses and all that stuff on that sale. I tweeted the whole clause out last night. So, but again, I mean, these guys are smart businessmen. I sort of doubt they would have done this on this time frame. Grant saying that it should be done by June, if they didn't already have sort of a plan on how to deal with that. If you do the math, it could be like $60 million that they owe if that valuation is like correct. But I can't see them paying anything like that, so unless they just have that much money, which is also a possibility, So I don't know. I'm a little surprised by the timeline. I always figured it happened next year,
You guys think DC United is worth $500 million?
Well, it's interesting. They did the Forbes valuations that come out every year. Last year,
the controversial.
Yeah, I was going to say, they maybe in the ballpark of accurate, but certainly more of an estimate than a scientific method. But they had DC United at, I believe, $230 million a year ago.
I mean, I guess including the new stadium, though, right? Is that what it is? Because I mean,
I'm not. If that included the new stadium, then that's crazy. I don't know how they could have doubled in value.
And I don't understand
without the stadium.
I don't understand how they're saying the stadium's worth $400 million unless they're including, for example, the $150 million the city put in, which is just like groundwork. I mean, they just installed utilities and did environmental remediation, that sort of stuff. It doesn't add to the value of the building, Yeah. The whole thing is just sort of baffling to me, honestly.
Do you guys ever know anybody who who had property or speculated on property in the lead up to the 2008 real estate crash and the Great Recession that it helped cause? There were houses, people were making, incredible amounts of money and getting all this money financing their house because it was supposedly worth all this money, and then overnight in 2008 the market crashed, and I'm feeling like there's a little bit of a bubble sensation here going on. I don't know who benefits from this evaluation, if there's any truth at all to the idea that any official calculations have valued DC United at this. Something's up.
The valuation thing is I don't know what was Juicero valued at, what I mean, or any of these startups that overnight just went belly up that had that had sort of crazy values and stuff like that. And I don't know. I mean, luckily the other part of that clause, Floyd, that I was just talking about, stipulates that if there's an issue, if a city has an issue with the valuation, there's a third-party arbitrator that will come in and figure all that out. But I don't know. I know this is all sort of inside baseball, but I just I get really. It really chaps my ass, public stadium financing, so this whole thing is already, irritating me. And
real quick, and not to get too far into the weeds here, but I don't know if you guys saw what's going on with Derek Jeter's Miami Marlins in baseball. They had the similar deal set up with the city, and they're being taken to court by the city of Miami in regards to they I think built a nice baseball stadium for them, and they're saying that they actually lost money instead of making 400% profit or whatever they actually made.
They shouldn't have spent, I guess, $800 million on that weird Marlin sculpture in center field or whatever. But,
so apparently they're trying to get out of they're trying to dodge the city's claim by saying, well, really, we're actually based in the British Virgin Islands because that's one of the parent company. The parent company has a tax shelter.
It was DC United Stadium LLC, a Delaware-based limited liability. It's what they keep saying in all the stadium agreement documents. So there's a reason they did that, right?
I hope there's an exotic island or or small island nation somewhere that has DC
I hope
United,
it's just like a.
controlling interest.
I just hope it's just like an island in the Chesapeake, like Smith Island, like a Smith Island LLC. You know?
What's that abandoned Confederate era?
Right, Fort Carroll LLC.
In a related story, David Beckham's Miami MLS team still doesn't have a stadium locked down. Not sure if that has anything to do with it.
Unbelievable.
So, I think what DC United fans are going to want to know about this potential sale is what does it mean for the team on the field? There's been a lot of expectations that once they move into this new stadium, they would start to spend a little bit more on the on-field product. They've obviously been one of the more budget-conscious teams in the league over the last several seasons. You would have to think, though, that this new investor would be even more of a factor in terms of how much they're spending. And this could actually be a situation where they're going to go after some big-name, expensive players.
Yeah, for example, Mario Balotelli is somebody that Grant Wall, SI, at least said that the club has been in contact with his agent, right? I don't know even what that means, obviously, but that seems like a terrible fit, right? I mean, I am a total Balotelli fan, and he's like one of the 5 players, I was just telling Charlie this the other night, that I think would move the needle attendance-wise for any club that he's on. He doesn't make any sense for this team, though.
Why not? I mean, aside from he's far too good to come to MLS at this age.
Why not? It's true that you never know how personalities interact, but Ben Olsen's had certain principles that he seems to have built his team, his coaching philosophy on. Selflessness, hard work, tracking back, hard work off the ball, strikers being the first line of defense. These are not necessarily well-known skill set tools in the Mario Balotelli toolkit.
Yeah. I don't know. I do think it's interesting, and I like. Maybe we can touch on this later. Like, you know what? I'll come back to it. Go ahead, Thomas.
I would just say that Balotelli is coming off a very strong season,
of course,
in France, and I think he's playing at a level and is showing a degree of professionalism by all accounts that would make him more compatible with DC United than past iterations of Balotelli, if you will.
Yeah, I just imagine a scenario where they've told him he'll be playing with Zlatan, and then he gets here and they're like, no, Zoltan. We said Zoltan.
So I think that Balotelli on a playing level should be at a big club in Europe right now. The one thing that may possibly push him towards MLS is that I think he could be getting a little fed up with Europe. Everywhere he's gone, he's had issues with being racially abused, and by most accounts, that isn't as much of an issue here. He can't get a game right now for Italy, no matter how well he plays. He's kind of getting frozen out.
I hope your implication there is that so he'll just give up on his national team career and come to MLS. Like he's not gonna. I mean, seriously. He could ask Sebastian Javinko how that's worked out for him.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's not getting called up regardless. Yeah. But I mean, maybe that would push him a little bit more towards taking the money here.
I'm kind of fascinated because I hope this happens. I hope they make it work because I'm sure we'll get into this later, but DC United, in terms of its identity as an organization, right? They spent all this extra time and all this money to build the downtown stadium. They've added the flag element to their crest. They've sort of like really until at least they announced that they're going to bolt for the suburbs in terms of their daily operations with the new training complex. They've been really emphasizing their ties to the District of Columbia, and to me, if you really want to connect with DC, someone like Mario Balotelli could inspire young DC kids, especially young DC kids of color, to sort of see themselves in the club, see a role model, an incredible personality, and incredible player. I hope they would make it work, with that in mind.
That's actually what I was going to touch on, and I think what you just said is completely true. And so much is made of DC United's failure to capture the Latin American sort of market and their interest in DC, it's almost never talked about that they've sort of equally failed in capturing the interests of the African American community in DC. And if you look at the makeup of the roster, I mean, I would love to see Balotelli if it was sort of like a part of an effort to make the team reflective of what the district really is, which is like diverse, multicultural, forward thinking. But I don't know. It is true. A lot's been said about how DC's sort of lost their identity. In the early '90s, early 2000s, they had a very strong identity, even as recently as the mid 2000s. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it would be huge for the black community in DC too. The black soccer community.
Now, do we think this is realistic though, or is this a situation similar to, say, the Wayne Rooney report from last summer, where it came to light? I believe Steve Goff reported that DC United had been in touch with Rooney's representatives about potential move, but nothing came of it. Is this,
if I'm being honest,
similarly flippant, or is there something to this? If I'm being honest,
the fact that the team confirmed that they reached out to him makes me even more skeptical of it. You know what I mean? It just seems like kind of glib PR.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
posturing to say, look, we're in touch with these big names. Yeah.
That's just my take on it. Obviously, it's not based on some concrete fact, obviously, but that's just my gut feeling.
I'll say, like, the one thing that would make me, if you're a DC fan, more optimistic that this time around there's something to it is the stadium. They finally are moving into the new stadium, and past precedent potentially goes out the window now that they have that facility.
When is the training facility opening? Next year?
That much I'm not completely sure, but I believe the timeline is next year.
But so the other thing to bear in mind, though, is that, like, we've all heard from players. I just heard from a former DC United player a couple months ago that players would the team would try and court big-name players. They would come to RFK and see the training facilities and just be like, oh, my God, I'm not doing this. And that's going to be United's reality.
Is this legal?
Exactly, yeah.
That's going to be
code. You can't feed me Subway every day. Like... That's going to be the team's reality at least for another year. The rest of this season, I'm not sure. You know what I mean? So
it's my understanding that the USL stadium is going to be built first, so that the USL team can start playing at the start of the 2019 season, and then. So I think my guess, my gut tells me that they won't actually move daily training operations out until sort of maybe a year or more from now.
Yeah,
like well into 2019.
And when you go to a place like Kansas City or RSL or even Philadelphia now with their new facility, it really sort of hammers it home how, I mean, if we're at an availability, whatever, it's a soccer field, doesn't seem that, but when you go to one of these facilities, you're like, oh, yeah, this is a shithole, basically. You know what I mean?
So if you're taking the cynical view and saying that maybe this Balotelli rumor is coming more from the team than coming from any sense of an actual transfer that may happen, I think it's a little dangerous for them to be setting the bar this high, in that even if they don't get Balotelli, like, this is the caliber of player they have been linked with. And if they move into their new stadium and they are presumably going to sign a designated player or two, but if they sign some unknown guys from South America or guys that just aren't going to really move the needle that much, you wonder what the reaction of the fan base is going to be.
I have a question from the audience here. It's completely unrelated, but Charlie might be a good person to help us with this. I wonder if the next 2 minutes, one of our viewers wants us to run down the top 5 hard men in MLS history. I'm going to put Stoichkov immediately in that group.
Every time I see Stoichkov doing Univision work,
you hear the sound.
I think about
of
that poor American university kid's. Oh my gosh! Was it tibia or fibula, whatever it was that was snapped, like Tinder.
Kovalenko? Do you think?
Kovalenko was very hard and definitely was quirky enough, personality-wise, that people, opposing players, didn't really know. I think that's the ultimate weapon, is if you seem just crazy enough or just hard enough that nobody knows what you're capable of.
Yeah,
and Demo is definitely one of those people.
What about in the
Ozzy Alonso? Ozzy Alonso seems like a hard as nails individual that I would
honey badger
that I would not want to face up to or have sort of in my blind spot.
Diego Chara?
I guess so. I mean, he's definitely a good player.
What about an Aurelian Collin? I mean, I don't put him in the
he's
top
the
5
dark
ever,
arts,
but
right? I mean,
yeah.
he's one of those guys. He does the nasty
I'm
stuff.
gonna do a low key one. Bobby Boswell.
Right? We've heard this from players.
Absolutely, like one of the especially in his earlier career, great blend of like skill and just sort of like off the ball, dirty, horrible.
Underrated. One who's in black and red colors right now. Yamil Assad has been a good boy here in DC for the most part, but he got a little bit of a reputation around the league last year for a guy who liked to leave the boot in when that Atlanta pressing game. He would stray elbows. Maybe a little late challenge after the ball's released.
Yeah, and you think of a couple of guys that were with DC United over the past couple seasons that kind of played a similar role. Marcelo Sarvas, Davey Arnaud.
The old man game.
Some of
those
these
guys had the old man game.
Well known for getting that first-minute challenge in that would be a yellow card at any other point in the game, but the ref somehow
one of our
doesn't
viewers
give him
trying
a
to say
yellow
like
for
Carlos Ruiz, but I put him more in the dirty category than the hard
I'd say,
category. There's difference between
Felipe and Kendall Waston.
Oh, Felipe is just next level. Absolutely. And I even called. I was like, he's maybe the dirtiest player in MLS right now, and he favorited the fucking tweet. So,
how about Roger Espinosa?
Espinosa's a good shout.
Yeah.
I think old school Richie Williams. Like he just was like the king of somehow avoiding the persistent infringement yellow, despite having 5 or 6 ticky-tacky fouls, like just clipping people's ankles all game. I actually. So this is like
Rafa Marquez.
No, so this is a real story of Richie Williams coaching when I was playing for a club in Chantilly. So this is like 15-year-old Thomas. Richie Williams was our trainer, and he came by once a week to, impart his coaching wisdom on us. I believe it was his first ever coaching job. He was still an active player, then became, all the way the national team assistant. And he would give us little tips, you're marking a guy on the corner, just pinch him, and they'll throw him off. Yeah. So that was a part of his actual game.
Is this a censored version of did he tell you what part to pinch?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying.
Story.
I mean, I'm trying to remember. There was some inappropriate. I feel like he didn't directly tell us to kind of go for any sort of crotchal area.
He told you to pinch the head of the guy's penis. Just say it. Jesus Christ, dude.
No. I don't remember that specifically.
Yeah.
Good question.
Did you guys notice that? That was one of the VAR moments of this past weekend.
Penis pinching?
Well, no, there was somebody gave a little the proverbial Bangkok move.
Oh, the tap.
Yeah, it was the Quakes.
Bangkok move.
The Bangkok move.
Oh, I understand. Bangkok.
Dempsey got VAR red for that.
Right, so
pretty recently.
It was Cummings, maybe. I'm blanking on which Quakes defender it was, but injury time red card for giving a little calling card.
Can't pull the Bangkok move on Cummings. Because
what's funny was when Dempsey got sent off for that, I think it was Jeb Borowski went on Twitter and was like, there are lots of MLS players who've gotten a sack tap from Dempsey over the years.
Wow.
In fact, the same referee, I forget which referee had given him that VAR card, but the same referee had given him a card in the exact same circumstances last year.
By the way, different listener asks, how about top 5 soft men now? That's a harder list to make, I think,
That's a good one, though.
It would just be a bunch of, I think, Latin American simulators and exaggerators. I could even hone that down to CCL, I don't know. What about the Armando Guevara,
the towel snapping?
That's a number 1 soft man moment. Are you familiar with that? Armando Guevara went to take a throw in near who were they playing?
They're playing the Quakes at the old Giant Stadium.
And he went to take a throw in by the Quakes bench, and somebody on the Quakes,
Ramiro Corrales, Quakes legend Ramiro Corrales,
yeah, who then was probably already 36, just gave Guevara a little tug on his shorts, and then somebody on the bench just snapped a towel. It didn't even hit him, and
straight up locker room move.
Yeah, and it literally he grabbed his face and just went down and he got somebody red carded on the bench.
Ramiro Corrales was red carded from the bench.
Yeah, so that's
for snapping a towel.
That's your ultimate soft man move. So we can't do 5 of them, but let's just go ahead and give him number 1.
Ruiz has got to be on that list, I would think.
100%. Yeah.
Both the hard men and the soft men. That's quite an accomplishment. So I think before we move on to CCL, do we want to do a quick update on some of the supporters group drama going on with DC United? We've touched on this before, but I think we've had some new developments. So
yeah, I mean, I just read what Barbara Brava tweeted out today. I haven't talked to anybody since that City Paper piece I ran. I knew they were meeting with a team. You know, they went out with Tom Hunt and sort of took a tour of the field. Nothing apparently came of that meeting other than the team saying, "Hey, you're still welcome to buy tickets, you know, under the same conditions that the general public does."
Wow, what a generous offer.
Exactly. And then today, I guess Barbara is saying they're going to have no presence at home games. They'll still do road trips, but no organized tifos, banners, anything like that. That's a loss. I mean, there's no other way to put that, I think. But
this is, you've reported on this issue. You and I reported together on the one of the sort of pavestones that got us to this point 2 years ago when they when the club banned a leading member of the District Ultras for a year for popping smoke, not even in the stadium, but on the stadium grounds at RFK. Smokegate or whatever people were calling that, and then the sort of issue about the Screaming Eagles being bestowed with official or lead role status in the supporter culture at the new stadium. I'm hesitant to wade into this because it's a whole probably episode unto itself, and there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of different perspectives. I want to show respect for everybody's perspectives, but I just my personal view here is I'm shocked that we're here. I'm shocked that this club has been so ham-handed. Whatever their sort of factual approach to things or their real, just the lack of outreach, the lack of sort of any kind of familial relationship. People talk about their club as a family and the culture around it, and it just seems like they keep whiffing on opportunities to patch this up, to create some kind of closure, to move on and have some kind of positive relationship with all of the organized supporters groups, which are so important in soccer culture in general, specifically for the atmosphere they want at the new stadium.
I mean, I just like it. I think it goes without saying, but there are situations where I think the common sort of perception in MLS is that you get the stadium and it's just guaranteed influx of money, guaranteed sellout, whatever. You really just have to look at a team like Houston, or even the Red Bulls to a certain extent, to see that a stadium isn't everything. I mean, I think it would be stupid to say that for the first year or two. I mean, the stadium's going to be full every game. People have been waiting for this for a long time, but I think United might find themselves in a situation 2-3 years down the line where they need those same supporters that sort of filled RFK when the team was struggling. So it's
the foul weather fans,
exactly,
as that old tifo went.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because I just I don't know.
Look at Orlando, right? So Orlando had a beautiful downtown stadium open. Was that the beginning of last year?
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like it was going to be, they were expecting sellouts for months or years, and there's already empty seats showing up here and there. And Houston, as you mentioned, is a great example of a city where on paper they're selling X number of seats, tickets. There's a name attached to a lot of the seats in their stadium, but when game day comes around, there's way too many seats that are not full. So whatever your business numbers in terms of your dollars you're coming in, that's not the same as a packed stadium, the atmosphere and the experience for your fans that creates, and the home field advantage for your team.
Yeah, I think it would be a big mistake for anybody at DC United to assume that this new stadium is a silver bullet for them because of the situations that you guys just mentioned. I mean, they have to put together a competitive product on the field, and they have to have good relations with their most passionate fans, and right now they don't have either of those.
You could also make an argument that when it comes to MLS originals who eventually got their own stadium, that DC United their relevance is at a lower point than any of these other teams. Like they're starting out in a pit. You know what I mean? They've been I don't know another way to put this, like sort of the laughing stock of the league for, at this point, 6, 7, 8 years. You know what I mean? So they're not starting out in a point where they're like charging into this place and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of resentment already.
Yeah, and I think the mid-season opening of the stadium could also be a product, or could also be a problem, because they're starting out with this huge road trip, and there's going to be excitement around the opening of the stadium no matter what, but that could be dampened a little bit if they're 20 points outside of a playoff spot by the time they open the stadium, which, I mean, it could happen based on the way they started the season.
Easily. Here's a sidebar. Floyd, let me ask you something. I feel like the sort of long road trip is a baked-in excuse as far as the team doing poorly, and that's fine. I'm curious how long you think Ben Olsen lasts in the new stadium if they underperform. When I say underperform, I mean last place, second to last place. Do you genuinely think that now there's sort of like actual palpable pressure?
I think there's palpable pressure, but I also think he'll get to the end of this season, or at least, like October. I don't think they will, fire him in June and have a new coach going in the new stadium. I don't think they'll fire him in August if they open the new stadium and aren't immediately picking up points. Yeah. But if they have another season where they are well out of a playoff spot and their last few matches are not even relevant, to a degree, it can be chalked up to this, like you said, baked-in excuse of the extremely long road trip to start the season. And also, if it is true that they're signing players mid-season and bringing a Balotelli or someone comparable, well, then that's another excuse, if you will.
Now we finally have money to spend.
Exactly. Like, we didn't have all these players in the first half of the season. We were waiting to spend until the stadium opened. But those, I think, give him more time. But I think if at the end of the season things haven't changed, we are at a point now where there's potentially new ownership, and it will have been back-to-back seasons without the playoffs, seasons without progress. I mean, I don't know how much this weighs on ownership, but you look at things like the anonymous player survey that ESPN lists, and Ben Olsen is being mentioned in coaches you least want to play for, and it said there's an anonymous player saying he obviously fires up the guys, but I want a coach who knows the X's and O's. It seems like that reputation is growing throughout the league, and that's something the ownership is going to be conscious of. All these things are going to be building against him if the results don't come. If the results come, then all of a sudden he can say, hey, look, we've made the playoffs. What will it have been? 5 out of 6 years? They've had success in the not, in pretty recent memory. So it can go a lot of different directions.
I want to share this great tweet that popped up in a discussion about today's Barbarava announcement that they won't be involved in an organized way as of now. Somebody said DC United and their fans are the Fleetwood Mac of MLS. Like there's this drama, right? There's been this back and forth thing, both between the supporters groups, among them, between them and the. Does
that make Barbarava the Lindsey Buckingham or something?
It's a good question.
Left behind
I'm not sure
on the
who's
tour?
The real question is who's the Stevie Nicks, and I have no idea. But it reminds me though, this is the culture thing matters, right? And right now it seems that DC United's front office feels like they sort of reached the oasis after decades in the desert. They're finally going to be able to get fed off this new stadium. But you get a stadium, and it's like a new signing. You get one shot from a casual fan. I've talked to people who are coming out to games, but think about all those fans that came out to watch Zlatan on Sunday. New fans, first-time fans coming back to the Galaxy maybe, and they get whooped pretty good on home turf. How many of them say like I'm done? Right?
Yeah, this was bullshit. It was exactly
nothing's really changed.
Well, he didn't even score 2 goals in 20 minutes.
Not even one goal from 40-plus yards on the volley.
Sucks. Soccer sucks.
Exactly.
I'm out.
I'm going to the LAFC game. You know. Do we even want to talk about why they suck or not, DC United?
I think we should move on to CCL a little bit.
It's pretty self-explanatory.
That is a...
just like listen to one of our podcasts from last April.
Yeah.
And use those reasons.
So I want to touch on CCL because this was last night. Kind of a mixed bag for MLS. The Red Bulls have like 20 shots to Chivas's 0 and still manage to not score and go out. with a scoreless draw at home.
What a horrible game to watch.
And then TFC goes to the Azteca and gets an early goal and pretty much cruises to win, or they tied, but they won the series pretty comfortably against Club America. So it's kind of a mixed bag for MLS. I mean, Toronto FC obviously is a cut above any other MLS team right now based on beating Tigres and Club America in back-to-back two-legged playoffs. I mean, it's far and away the most impressive thing that an MLS team has ever done in this particular iteration of the CONCACAF Champions League, but also maybe a sense of disappointment that, you know, we could have clinched having an MLS champion of the CCL already by now, and now Toronto FC has to face off against Chivas USA just Chivas in the final.
I feel like that would have been underwhelming. I feel like if MLS is going to clear this hurdle and finally win CCL,
completely. So
they
one
need to
team
beat.
has to do it. One team has to do it.
Yeah, they need to beat a Liga MX powerhouse in the final. And it would have been, obviously it wouldn't have been any, it wouldn't have been a wet blanket on Toronto's accomplishment. Everyone would have seen, hey, they beat two Liga MX teams on the way, including, a Tigres side in particular that looks like one, the strongest team in Liga MX over the last year or two. But if, they had beaten the Red Bulls in the final, from the, MLS catching up with Liga MX narrative, I feel like that actually would have, would dampen the accomplishment a little bit. I want to see Javinko and Bradley and Altidore against historic Liga MX power in the final, lifting the trophy on Mexican soil.
I was incredibly pleased, at least, that Piojo was forced to. I mean, he's just been talking so much shit for. It's incredible. A lot of it true. I don't know if you saw his comments the other day that said that MLS teams are spending, I don't know what the adjective was, but like an enormous or astronomical amount of money to catch up to Liga MX.
I mean, are they spending more than Liga MX teams?
Well, I think his point was that MLS does a lot of it under the table. He was like, if you think that Zlatan's actually only getting paid $1.5 million, you're crazy, And there's a point to be made there. I mean, it goes back to the Jorge Campos and his Ferrari Testarossa, but MLS has been doing things that way for a long time.
Yeah, but it's kind of ripe coming from a Liga MX kind of lifer coach.
Completely. And what's the criticism? Are they saying that? Is he saying that MLS should do it by not spending any money, or you know what I mean? Like,
really, it's a compliment if you think about the stories that you hear from people like Hercules Gomez about how rife,
Mexican, with corruption and stuff,
with paying guys under the table, dodging taxes. I mean, when DeMarcus Beasley
was Chivas' case, not paying guys apparently, or forcing them to stay at the Holiday Inn Express.
DeMarcus Beasley was at Puebla. It was at Puebla when they were raided by the tax authorities, and they had like training gear confiscated because their owner had some unpaid taxes. So
that's some Rayo OKC level shit.
I feel like maybe Piojo was actually giving a compliment, but just didn't wrap it in the right bow for people to recognize it that way.
My favorite moment of any game last night was listening to the Univision commentary about it was Tim Parker, who just sprayed a ball completely out of it. Was trying to play someone down the side. It just went
kicked one into the media tribunal there.
Exactly. And one of the Univision guys goes, "Pero parece que este chico tiene un pie de Toblerone." Like he has a Toblerone bar for one of his feet. Which I was just told, this is why Twitter is great, right? I tweeted this out like it's this nonsensical thing, and some guy in Holland is like, oh, no, that's a common saying in Dutch soccer that your weaker foot is a chocolate foot, right? And so I learned this apparently.
Thomas Rongen, can you tweet at us to confirm that this is in fact?
Yeah, so my initial reaction to that
would
be...
Or it's a completely true statement, and also Lionel Messi is horrible at soccer.
My initial thought would be that was actually a compliment. I feel like you have a chocolate foot. Like it's sweet, yeah.
Yeah. No,
Swiss international of a foot.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But I heard that and I almost died. So
Yeah. So I wanted.
Parece que tiene un pie de Toblerone. Este chico.
So I wanted to ask you guys. There's been a lot made of MLS's success or lack thereof in this competition over the last several seasons, and it seems like this year has been a little bit of a tipping point in terms of MLS maybe getting a little bit farther, having a little bit more success against Mexican teams. But here we are, and we're in the final, and it's just one MLS team that made it. There were two MLS teams into the semifinals, and the Red Bulls fell in heartbreaking fashion. So I know that MLS has definitely been improving. A lot of it is because of an injection of money to sign TAM players over the last couple of years. But how much of this has to do with MLS as a whole improving, and how much of this has to do with just one exceptional team in Toronto FC setting the bar really high?
I think that's a big part of it in terms of the way this Toronto team seems, I think, better positioned than any MLS team before it to win CCL. That said, that doesn't, I guess, explain why New York went as far as they did, and how Seattle managed to advance as far as they did. I guess part of it is the new format, right, which allows MLS teams to enter a round of 16 against where they're playing non-Mexican teams, and gives them a little bit of an easier path to the quarterfinals. And then I think part of it is the TAM signings, specifically with Seattle. They brought on Eriksson, I believe, off the bench in their round of 16 matchup, and he's a TAM signing from this past offseason, and he made the difference. He was the game changer that allowed them to advance, and that was in my mind a very tangible representation of how just having one or two more difference makers with a high salary can make an MLS team more competitive in this competition. But to circle back, at the end of the day, this Toronto team, think about who are their TAM players. Like Vazquez, injured, didn't play. I think Mavinga might be a TAM player, injured, didn't play. Vanderveel, he made it through the first half of this second leg and got injured. They're missing Altidore, who's a DP for almost the entire second leg. They got by with with a team that didn't really rely on a lot of these TAM level players. They got by with the depth that they built with journeymen and homegrown players, and just the complete roster top to bottom that they built in that TFC culture.
And Alex Bono standing on his head repeatedly.
Well, yeah, but the like you said, though, the Red Bulls are an example here that it's not just all about money, right? The Red Bulls have kids. They only have two DPs. One of them didn't even. I don't think he started at CCL match this whole season or this whole spring. I think, and I wrote about this on a U.S. Soccer Players column a week or so ago. Both those examples are easily replicable for other MLS teams, and we've forgotten now because it was way back in February. But the first team that Toronto beat on the way to this final were the Colorado Rapids, whose the new coach said, well, these are preseason games, right? And they clearly didn't prioritize that competition. Toronto did, and credit to the league for moving games. They postponed games to give their teams a better chance of success here. They've worked on multiple fronts, right? We for years and years we clowned on MLS wanting so badly to win CCL and falling short in various heartbreaking circumstances. When they even got that far, everything seems to have clicked into place. And if you can spend some money, you still have to have a good club culture. It's not dependent entirely on money, but Tom Marshall has talked about this during the run, with covering the two series that TFC beat solid Mexican teams. And he said this is different from Montreal 3 years ago. This is the sense that in Mexico is Montreal had bunkered and sort of had luck and drama and were over exceeding their capacity to get to that point. Nobody is asking any questions about this TFC team. The TFC team has believers south of the border.
And in a way, you could, like roster mechanisms, etc. aside, I can't remember. A lot of it has to do with playing style. I can't remember the last time I saw an MLS team play against a Mexican team the way the Red Bulls did last night, and that's just the way the Red Bulls play every week. I mean, I don't know when the last time a Mexican team played an MLS team and got pressed that hard was. You know what I mean? And that's probably a step in the right direction too.
Yeah,
I mean, like the optics of the game were so much better from an American point of view. The final result obviously not, but that could have also easily been completely different.
I also think it's worth throwing a bone to Greg Vanney and Jesse Marsh and giving them some credit for the tactics they employed and the substitution patterns and the lineup juggling they did, balancing MLS matches with CCL matches and getting the right mix, and the fact that although there have been a few examples of these young coaches in MLS being thrown to the wolves and not panning out, that
guys, we've got a call. Sorry to interrupt. Open wide for some soccer. Well, open wide for some soccer. How can we help you? Sorry.
Hey, no problem. Mine's Robert.
Hey, Robert.
I wanted to call in to ask you guys about I don't know if you guys talked about, but Bruce Arena's new upcoming book.
Anybody? Charlie, do you?
Stop.
Oh,
Go ahead. What, I want to hear your take on it. Are you going to buy this book? Are you going to read this book?
Well, I've seen some experts that have been tweeted out, and just some of it just seems a little bit like, revisionist history in some form or way. Because he says he wants to take responsibility, but he says like if this happened or that happened. But it just shows a little incompetence about the federation, how they couldn't sack Klinsmann earlier.
Can somebody catch me up with this? Because I thought my assumption always was that the petty rear view mirror bullshit was going to happen from Klinsmann, not from Arena.
Yeah. Why did Klinsmann actually got a team to the World Cup?
Yeah.
And got him out of the group stage, and he didn't get a book deal.
Yeah,
At least not from what I can remember. Maybe
Yeah,
he already
true.
wrote. He'd already made that check. But yeah, I was fascinated to see that one. So Arena, the fact that he gets a book deal after he crashes the plane into the mountain and has the biggest failure of his coaching career in the most high pressure moment, and then he sort of tells this tale out of school a little bit about how really they would have hired me 8 months before, except Dan Flynn had to have a heart transplant. And that was incredible too, because there were two people making the decision as to when the national team coach was hired or fired: Dan Flynn and Sunil Gulati. Dan Flynn goes in for a short notice medical condition, and Klinsmann doesn't get fired.
unbelievable.
Some real issues there.
So here's an excerpt that will be particularly grating, I think, to all who
Yes, please.
observe this
Please
team.
read it.
If I had to do it all over again, I'd take the
Can
job.
you read it in his voice, please?
If I had to do it all over again,
Thank you.
I'd take the job again in a second. And even though people don't want to hear it, I don't think that, given the limited time I had, there is much I would do differently either.
Oh my God.
Besides, I got paid. The check's still
Yeah.
cashed.
I mean, maybe I wouldn't have used the same starting 11, but I don't know.
This sort of reminds me of right after the U.S. got bounced from the World Cup and he went on Fox, and
Oh my God.
it was a cringeworthy
Yes.
appearance for a number of reasons. But I think the one moment that sticks out to me is when they asked him if he thought that any players in the U.S. kind of fell through the proverbial cracks and were not discovered, and he was just like, no. Like I think
Absolutely,
I
got
think
it all
every,
covered. Everything's fine.
he was like, every player in the U.S. that deserves to be a professional soccer player is.
I mean,
discovered.
yeah, we missed the what's his name, Jeremy Gonzalez, but whatever. Like,
Yeah, so they weren't even really talking about Jonathan Gonzalez, just like anybody who falls through the cracks.
Yeah.
And like, how many full-time scouts does U.S. Soccer have?
It was incredible to me in the worst way that he was even on television.
I know.
Less than a month after the fiasco in Cuba, Trinidad, that Fox needs a hot, spicy hook for an otherwise meaningless friendly. Bruce Arena is your spicy
Arena.
hook.
listen,
It was like the "if I did it" moment.
Well,
for
look,
Bruce
I don't.
Arena.
Yeah. I mean,
Shout out to
Hey, can I say one thing, guys?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, you asked me earlier if I was gonna buy it. I'm really interested in one line that he said. It was like in the press conference before the TNT game, and it was like, I want to see. He was like talking about the European hotshots, and that just I don't know, kind of really bothers me. And I just want to know if he's actually going to bring that up in his book. That's just like the one thing I'm interested in.
Just his general.
How much shade? How much salt?
Kind of his, like taking his eye off the ball. Just like like he goes to TNT and sees like the flooded stadium, and then he's probably thinking to himself like this is like some backwards country he's in, and then the TNT players just show him up.
It's a hate read for sure, isn't it?
Completely.
Kind of. I would say that. I think you kind of hit on that.
Hey man, we appreciate the call.
Thank you very much.
So, I mean, my only thought is that I hope Bruce is enjoying his year off before he becomes DC United's head coach in 2019. So,
I think the other thing that fascinates me
it's a sort of homecoming. So,
I got bills.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So I'm fascinated by the person. You know, people are so aggravated by someone like Bruce Arena who does. It's like it doesn't seem to be a sense of shame. But I had this experience with like all the hating on Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley last fall, right during their playoff run. It's like there's this idea that why do I have to look at you after you had this failure? And I don't think the average fan understands that someone like Bruce Arena is just wired so differently from any of us. Like there's just to be a high achiever in most cases, you have to have this imperviousness,
blinders,
this lack of self-awareness on some level. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys want to talk about? We actually haven't even done a show since Zlatan Ibrahimovic, scored from. I take it you were watching that. You know what's funny is I was watching that with a friend of mine who's like not super into MLS, and when he scored that, I was so relieved because the whole game was so entertaining, but when he scored that goal, both of us were off the couch and screaming and running around his living room.
Let me guess, he tuned in for the Sporting KC game and then afterwards was like, okay, I'm never watching MLS again.
This is why I support Leeds United. Quality soccer.
You're not even from England. Why do you talk like that?
Exactly. Leeds United. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. John. Yeah, what is there to say?
I just want to say that I think it's good for MLS that the Galaxy are relevant and that they're again, a team that has people not only across the league but across the world discussing them because the way that organization is run top to bottom in terms of, targeting the right players for on-the-field success and marketing and relevance.
Pleasant dealings with media members. I don't know. Let's put that out there.
I mean, I'll even say like the
mascots.
Mascots, of course.
Right.
I was very impressed by the way they handled the Zlatan signing. That
100%,
video they put together with a real lion.
I can't wait to see what DC United has in store for the Balotelli announcement.
And it may have just been a coincidence, but the fact that they signed him the week before the LAFC game was a message sent, whether they meant it or not.
Did anyone see the ratings for that game? Were they actually good or not? I meant to check that. Like they were.
I think they were good, not great.
Like just above the Drone Racing League, or was it like?
Dude, don't down the Drone Racing League. Have you watched this stuff?
Bill Dance's Saturday fishing show and
reruns of The Big Bang Theory.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I guarantee you those pull more viewers based on the number of people who inexplicably like that show.
Well, the interesting thing about Zlatan is that as we saw this past weekend, he may not actually prevent LA from being a bad team.
Did you see? I think you did because we were texting about this. You see the moment where I was like, he got torched by who's the KC player?
Russell.
And I, like both of us were like, wait a minute, is Zlatan playing left back right now? Like he was all over the field, and I don't mean that in a good way.
I will say, this was kind of papered over because the two of them played together in Zlatan's debut, and it obviously went very well, but Kamara and Zlatan are two players who they have invested a lot in. Kamara, I believe, just signed a new contract, and you have to have both of them on the field, and I'm still not quite sure how that's going to work.
Yeah,
especially with Gio Dos Santos also in the equation.
Yeah, they've only played with one-striker system.
Yeah.
They have a bit of an embarrassment of riches right now,
Yeah,
but maybe not necessarily in the best way.
well, I mean, you look at the talent. They've got Zlatan, Ola Kamara, Alessandrini, Baggio Husidic, and
Cosmo.
well, no, they have Pontius, they have Leggett, they have Boateng, they have
Both Dos Santos.
both Dos Santos brothers. Getting all of that
Siggy
attacking
Schmidt.
talent on the field. It's if they can make that work, they should be one of the most entertaining, dynamic, successful teams in MLS. It's
Here's-
just making it work.
Here's a question too: is how many losses does it take before Zlatan starts publicly bashing Siggy Schmidt to the media? Just like, I mean, I'm actually serious. You know what I mean? Like, or saying things like, "Well, I have different idea for team," but
Who's his handpicked successor to undermine Siggy
who is
and install his own guy?
Himself.
you know, like Beckham's handlers chose Ruud Gullit.
Yeah.
Who is Zlatan's choice for head coach?
Carlo Ancelotti. I mean, realistically,
Ooh,
Oh
yeah.
wow, that's actually a good suggestion.
he was at the game, the Sporting KC game. He was there. Also,
Really?
He spent some time in Vancouver.
He lives
not long
there.
ago.
He lives there.
Likes North America.
At least part of
Yeah,
the
and like
part of
long,
the year.
long, like in the periphery at least of
He-
like rumored MLS coaches.
And
Someday.
he already coached Zlatan to a much heralded win over DC United with PSG in 2012.
That
So
was-
he
that was
has an MLS pedigree.
that was
Yeah.
the game when Daniel Ward died, right?
Yeah, let's get the rumor mill going. Bruce Arena to DC United, Carlo Ancelotti to LA Galaxy.
Wow.
Man, I hadn't even thought of that, but I think you're onto something.
Mario Balotelli to Phoenix Rising FC. You know,
If things really go south with Mourinho at Man United, maybe he
he's
recharges
still.
out in LA with Zlatan.
I still just want him to coach the U.S. national team so badly.
Oh God.
Yeah, I just don't think there's enough media exposure. Like Mourinho needs to come. Like I think he should go to LA, LAFC, NYC, one of those types of places where he can
Yeah.
be in. He could be in the U.S. sort of media spotlight every day.
Somebody's chiming in on our YouTube comments also. This is interesting. We're just talking about DC United Stadium, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if you guys have noticed. I mean, nobody talks about NYCFC's lack of a stadium.
I
And
mean,
there's,
I
like,
see
not even-
Michael Lewis talk about
Yeah,
it.
but Michael Lewis talks about everything. You know, I mean, we love Michael Lewis. But you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
You know,
He's
he
a
talks
soccer
about
writer.
exactly. He talks about like the JV Hofstra intramural co-ed team or something. He has an article on there. So, but yeah, I mean, it's insane to me. Like and that's a team that genuinely could be at risk of sort of like, you know, that baseball stadium starts drying up. They start pulling like 16,000 people a game. It looks horrible.
Yeah.
You know.
I think NYCFC and the Revolution, you know, there isn't a resolution
Who
to
gets the
those
stadium first?
Yeah, situations. It's going to be a problem.
Who gets the stadium first, NYCFC or the Revolution?
I'm gonna go with City. I think NYC does.
So do I. It's so
And you know
sad.
the other factor is the
Jesus
Yankees.
Christ.
We've seen reports that the Yankees are not entirely happy with having to share their facility with a soccer team.
Jesus
So
Christ.
maybe you know if a star Yankee outfielder turns his ankle on a David Villa divot, maybe
Did you
something
see that?
changes
Who was it?
quickly.
Like what USL team tweeted out a photo of like a mound that they patched up?
Tulsa. I believe that
Tulsa.
was
They were
Tulsa.
like
They
all
got
done,
the
right?
hydro mat. They got the hydraulic
were-
mat.
Yeah,
and they
but
were
then they
tweeting
appeared
it
to
out.
like patch it up with like hot pockets or something, or like, you know.
The funny thing was they were tweeting that out to brag about
Yeah.
it. They were like, "Look how well we have
know.
covered up this
it
baseball."
looked like a
mound."
patchwort quilt.
Yeah,
You know, like,
it looked
I've
like-
actually been to a Tulsa Roughnecks game.
Yeah.
I was there last summer. My niece lives in Tulsa and got married. I went to a Roughnecks game. They got a decent little environment there, and I think it probably buys them another like 5 to 8 meters of width on their pitch. That's probably what they're fired up about.
yeah, you came back with some Roughnecks gear.
I got the
right?
Roughnecks gear. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's incredible that even like a small market USL team like that is actually doing its thing. You know.
Yeah. How are those Rochester Rhinos doing?
Finally.
Yeah.
The Rhinos have not been evicted from their stadium for the few people who haven't been following this day to day. The city of Rochester tried to evict them from the stadium. Their entire plan has been to take a year off, regroup, and, you know, if they get their finances in order and find a sustainable model.
So the team's over. All right.
But
Can we? I'm going to fit in a quick 6 degrees of Rochester Rhinos, and Charlie, I need you to come up with a player. Just any player, make it as obscure as possible.
Marky Delgado.
Oh, that's so easy. Come on.
Really?
Just give him the mic. Yeah.
Okay, Marky Delgado. He played in Toronto with... Let me see. Where do I want to go with this?
Stop acting like you have multiple avenues you're choosing from.
He played in Toronto with Hercules Gomez, who played in Seattle with Clint Dempsey, who currently plays with former Rochester Rhino Jordan McCrary.
It's unbelievable, right? It's just unbelievable. It's...
Thank you.
I mean, I can't say I've ever fact-checked any of these, but...
I was about to say, like, there have been one or two times where we got called out afterward on Twitter because, I made a connection that wasn't legit, but I felt good about
Charlie,
that
do one more and try and make it somebody from the MLS's earlier era. That's his weak spot.
Ooh. You mentioned him earlier. Richie Williams.
He's got this to the national team side.
Richie Williams played with Ben Olsen, who coached Rochester Rhino Julian Boucher.
That was 2 degrees.
I mean, are we allowing coaching? If not,
Charlie,
I can find a different avenue.
Charlie, here we go. All right, go pre MLS.
Okay, hold on. How about Here's my favorite early era MLS hack. Ted Eck.
Oh, I think you got him. He doesn't even know who that is.
Bring it, boy.
Can I get a
friend?
clue? Like who did Ted Eck play for?
Ted Eck was a
Just give him a year and a roster.
Star Dallas Burn.
So
Okay, I can work with that. I assume he played with Jason Kreis.
Oh my God! He's just.
And then Jason Kreis in Orlando. Oh man, I'm blanking on the name. He coached a guy who was on loan to the Rhinos, but okay. I'll find a different way of getting there.
30 seconds.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Pressure's on.
Yeah.
Jason Kreis coached. Who's in?
20 seconds.
Oh Jesus. Will Johnson, who played with Johnny Steele in Salt Lake, former Rochester Rhino Johnny Steele.
No, see, Charlie, this is how you do it. Watch. Walter Barr. Joe Gaetjens. You have to do this stuff like this. Like,
Okay.
I'll make it easier for you. Shep Messing. Come on, you got the whole cosmos over there.
I mean, I need to think of a better link.
Go to Play, then to go to the Game of Our Lives movie.
Right.
Go to Sylvester Stallone, or is that Victory? Which one is it? I don't know.
Well, the one
you can't use the the
one with Gaetjens. This is where my mind went. Joe Gaetjens was a character in Game of Our Lives.
Wow.
Which featured John Harkes as an actor.
God, fuck my life. That's his entertainment angle here. Yeah.
And John Harkes played with, let's say Ben Olsen, who played with Kenny Burt on DC United, former Rochester Rhino.
Unbelievable, right? I mean, like, this is just...
Yeah, you feel kind of confident, like, oh, I got a good one, and then he does it in like 2.
Well, also,
in my defense, we're letting him use bullshit like Joe Gaetjens was played by,
I was gonna say, we have liberal rules for this game that you guys kind of gamely go along with.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you pick a player from the 50s who like literally disappeared off the face of the earth. I mean, it's like kind of tricky,
Yeah,
right?
I should have stuck with Walter Barr. He wasn't even in the world. He's just like a notable U.S. player from the 50s and 60s. He's not even,
I've never seen that movie, but isn't Gaetjens' portrayal a subject of controversy? Like
Is he portrayed by a white man?
Well, and like they had him practicing voodoo at one point because of his Haitian background. Yeah, it's on the Wikipedia article.
Pedro Serrano from Major League. I
actually covered for as when I was the beat writer for DC United, they asked me to go cover the screening of that movie.
What? No, you're talking about the one that I wrote.
The Game of Their Lives? Yes.
Oh, see, I did a screening. I did a review of DCS. What was that movie that
the one with
Gerard Butler? He's a DC United
FIFA
player.
movie? Oh,
No, he's a DC United player who
wow.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible. They used some also real DC United players, but then like CGI'd in random people. It was really strange.
So I stumbled onto a showing on our local ABC affiliate here of the FIFA.
Oh, United Passions.
United Passions.
United Passions. Yeah.
They were so determined not to compete with the Super Bowl. They ran United Passions opposite the Super Bowl.
It's incredible. God, I've heard that movie is bad, but not in an enjoyable way. It's just
incredibly bad.
It's
hard
just
to watch.
bad.
Meanders. It's overpriced. I mean, there's
if they just include
what's the other Gerard Depardieu? Depardieu with some really incredible facial makeup.
Everybody that was involved in that movie, I think, immediately disavowed it.
It was a career killer.
Question: who plays Chuck Blazer in the biopic? Thomas, yeah, I'm turning to you.
I was trying to think. Oh man, I'm blanking on the name. Who's the batshit crazy guy who cameoed on Entourage a bunch of times? Gary Busey. And have him grow a beard.
You have to put on probably 150 pounds. Yeah.
I got John Goodman. John Goodman's my pick.
Oh,
John Goodman with the big beard.
Yeah,
makeup and.
So I was trying to think of somebody who's that old and that overweight, and there really aren't that many people. So
yeah, they all die. Is the way it works.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you guys want to talk about how bad Seattle and Portland are, real quick?
I don't know, man. We've been going for a little while.
There was one thing that you mentioned that somebody was talking about comments. Somebody had tweeted us earlier about NYC, and asking whether if NYCFC cruises to the Supporters Shield as they're on pace to do now.
No, I don't think so. I mean, they haven't.
And if they get to MLS Cup and they get to host MLS Cup, if it happens at Yankee Stadium,
of course it does. The idea
right,
that
it has to. We will not allow them to play.
No, it's not just that. It's like the idea of. I mean, that's their home field advantage. They are used to playing on that field, right? I mean, I'm sure the players don't enjoy it, but it would be. Why would they neutralize that by playing at Giant Stadium or whatever? I don't know. And also,
I think it'd be lit as hell too to have an MLS Cup in the city.
Completely. And as far as whether they cruise to that, no, I don't think they do, because I've watched all their games and they've looked dominant at some times, but not at others. I mean, it's not like they've been eviscerating every single team they play. I
think they're building a.
And also, what happens if Villa gets injured? I mean, what if there's two?
He already has, but they still haven't lost.
Yeah, that's true.
Tajuri's better than Villa.
Oh my God!
Whoa!
Jesus Christ! Take it back.
That sound is the eggs cooking on Seth's take.
So you want to end the podcast? Is what you're saying, Seth?
Yeah, we're at 75 minutes. I think this might be the longest episode we've ever done.
Yeah. All right,
folks. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.